It almost feels like these days are blurring into one between Champions League matches, but there is, in fact, some news to discuss and some Premier League updates to talk about. This is today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you're doing good. I hope you're doing well. I hope you've had a very good weekend. I hope the start of your week's been good as well. And if you didn't listen to yesterday's show, that's why I say I hope you've had a good weekend. But yes, we are moving closer, ever so closer to the next Arsenal fixture, which is, of course, taking place tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll be looking ahead to that game more specifically with Crystal Palace, but there are some updates to discuss in today's show, as well as some news and, of course, your questions in part two. Good morning to Gooner Oz, to Paul, to James, Blackshine, Martin and Brian, Chanor. We've got Ken, we've got Barry, we've got Shari and Natty, Mubarak, Carlton, Louis, Paul. Good morning to you all. Thank you so much to so many of you for tuning in. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you've had an absolutely fantastic start to your week, as I have already said. But without further ado, let's not waste any more time. Let's jump into today's story, shall we? Beginning with the latest in the Premier League updates. There was one more game to play, which was last night, as Spurs tried to rise above 16th place in the table after being overtaken by the form side in the league, which happens to be Wolves, of course, who have in fact won their last 5 games. But the contrary of that is Spurs, who have won just one of their last 5 games, losing 4 of those 5. 2-0 loss to Fulham, a 1-0 loss to Spurs. They did beat bottom place Southampton, but lost away to Wolves before then last night losing to Nottingham Forest. It leaves them on 37 points and just 1 point ahead of West Ham. Spurs' next game against Liverpool. West Ham are away to Brighton. We could see a season where Spurs actually finish in 17th place. How brilliant would that be? It would be amazing to see that happen. For Nottingham Forest, it's a very good thing for them because as the race for the Champions League qualification spots is very tight indeed, they rise to 60 points in 3rd place, back above Newcastle. Newcastle only 1 point behind them in 4th. Man City only 1 point behind them in 5th. Chelsea only 1 point behind them in 6th with the same points as 7th placed Aston Villa. 3 points separate 3rd and 7th in what is a very, very, very exciting race for those Champions League qualification spots. For Arsenal, they're 6 points ahead of Nottingham Forest. They, of course, play against Crystal Palace at home on Wednesday with the chance to extend that gap. Nottingham Forest's next game is at home to Brentford on Thursday. And then, of course, the likes of Newcastle that aren't playing until the weekend with those earlier games because Forest and Palace are both involved in the FA Cup. Man City on Tuesday, being today, are playing against Aston Villa in what is a rather big game for them. And they could, of course, get the chance to move into 3rd place if they manage to beat Villa. Villa absolutely need to try and win their respective game. But yeah, big win for Forest, and Spurs looking exceptionally poor this season. But what a season it's been for Nottingham Forest. You have to give them credit for what they have managed to achieve. Moving into Arsenal's only major news story really to discuss today, and that is surrounding Viktor Gyokeres. Of course, we've heard many times about the Swedish striker who currently plying his trade with Sporting in Portugal, and we know that Arsenal are one of the keen kind of parties in the player. Well, there's a lot of stories that suggested that Sporting may indeed be lowering kind of their expectations. He has a €100 million release clause in his contract. However, according to a Bola, it is suggested that as part of his promise of scoring 20 goals in the league when he signed and not leaving till now for other lucrative opportunities, Sporting have reduced the exit fee to €70 million. So that would mean something in the early £60 million mark if they were to sign him, which puts him probably on the same kind of fee and figure as Benjamin Sesko. It would be a very similar price tag to Benjamin Sesko. So that's what we can come to expect if Arsenal were to go in for Gyokeres. It'll be around £60 million to get the player through the door, which obviously is far better than the 80-odd million that they would have had to spend to bring him in. But it is continuing his fine form with Sporting. Scored a hat-trick last weekend once again. continually raising that profile. He's currently got 34 goals in 29 Portuguese league matches, 47 goals across 46 games, and 11 assists. On top of that, he's managed to break his goal contribution record from last season and continues to be one of Europe's most prolific forwards. Yes, there's plenty of penalties involved in that as well, as people will continue to remind you. But certainly cannot take away the ability of the striker to continue to score plenty of goals. Mikel Arteta will be facing the media this afternoon. It's one of the rare press conferences that I'm not going to be in attendance for. I've got an event on this afternoon, which I'll be able to tell you more about in the near future. Can't mention anything about it at the moment, but will be about to tell you what's going on regarding kind of Arteta and kind of his views ahead of the game against Palace on Wednesday. We'll, of course, be talking about all of that from the press conference and tomorrow morning's show. So very much looking forward to that. Right, let's go to part 2. Your questions and more right after this. Right, let's go to part 2 and some of your questions. Now is the time to get some of them into the chat box over the next 20 minutes or so. If you've got any, please use that big capital Q. It really does help your questions stand out, or we're trying to be tackling as many of them as feasibly possible. If you didn't celebrate Easter over the weekend, I actually have a question for you. I put it out over the over my Twitter feed yesterday. It's a poll that you can go and vote on. I don't know if I should put the same poll in the chat box this morning. I feel like I should encourage you to go towards that poll in the Twitter feeds. But the question is relating to Easter. For those of you that were given, and to be honest, be real, the only real loving and caring idea at Easter is to give somebody a Cadbury's egg. Any other egg really is just a representation of how little somebody cares about you, in my opinion. But did you, when you unwrapped those, and you may not or may have, and you may do in the future, unwrap your Cadbury's Easter egg, did you find that the two halves were stuck together? Or did they come apart as soon as you opened kind of the wrapping? Because I tell you what, it's one of the most satisfying things where you open up your Easter egg and it just kind of opens into two perfect halves. But I'm finding more and more that that is not what happens anymore. But I did a poll yesterday on Twitter and there was over 200 votes on it for the people that were bothered. And it seems that the majority of people, 40% of those that voted said they're together, 9% said they were separate, and then a sad 51% said stick to football. I thought I had to give an option to those people that were not involved in it. But amazing how many people seem to think now the egg halves are fused. Back in the day, I was excited when I used to open that egg and they would just split into two perfect halves. But yeah, let me know and go and vote on that poll for me. Martin says, I've never had an Easter egg that comes apart like that. Wow, you've missed out. For the OCD among us, that I am certainly included within, it is a glorious moment of euphoria when that happens. Right, let's tackle some of your football-related questions, though, shall we? Let's go to Norris. Rob says, Fabrizio reported the lower price tag for Gyokeres a long time ago. Old news. Yeah, while it was reported, what we're talking about today, Rob, is that the explanation behind that fee being dropped. So, cheer up, put a smile on your face, Rob. Come on, do us a favour. Norris says, Tom, PSG have knocked out Liverpool and Villa. Has a team ever knocked out three teams for the same? Did they not also beat, I mean, they obviously didn't knock them out, but they beat Manchester City as well in the league phase. It's worth pointing that out. Robert says, if we win the Champions League, is it top six for the next 6 or so years? Is it next year's Champions League? If we win the Champions League, will it be top six? Also, would it be 7 English teams if United or Spurs win? So, the top 5 teams in English football will qualify for the Champions League. If Arsenal win the Champions League, it has no bearing on whether those 5 teams then become the top 6. It doesn't work that way. It would have had to have been Aston Villa who finished outside the top 5, then winning the Champions League to get another inclusion, if you like, into that top 6, if you will. So that would have made it 6, and then you could have had Spurs or Man United winning the Europa League, which would give them qualification to the Champions League, which could still happen. So we could have 6 English teams in the Champions League next season, but we can no longer have 7 because Villa were indeed knocked out. So hopefully that answers your question. Faceless says, "Hi Tom, do you think there is a chance that Gyokeres could go Man United?" Of course, there's a chance. They've got Ruben Amorim in charge, worked very heavily and closely with Gyokeres. Although I have seen a lot of suggestions that United are very keen on Viktor Osimhen, so maybe they'll end up going for the different Victor in the summer transfer market. Black Magic says, "Can you order these teams in order of their likelihood of winning a trophy this season? 1 Liverpool, 2 Man City, 3 Arsenal, 4 Chelsea, 5 Tottenham, 6 Man United." Okay, so it would be 1 Liverpool, because obviously they're going to win the league, so we all know that. I think 2 Manchester City, because I think they're well on nailed on favourites to be the FA Cup winners this season. 3 would be Arsenal for the Champions League. 4 would be Man United. 5 would be... No, sorry. What am I talking about? I'm forgetting Chelsea are in the Conference League. So 1 Liverpool, 2 Chelsea, 3 Man City, 4 Arsenal, 5 Man United, and 6 Tottenham. That would be the order, because Chelsea are absolutely going to win that UEFA Conference League. So yeah, 1 Liverpool, 2 Chelsea, 3 Man City, 4 Arsenal, 5 Man United, 6 Tottenham. NSW says, "Tom, is it true that you were invited to a royal event as a special guest to be knighted?" No royal events, I'm afraid. It was a one-off thing. But this one's pretty cool. Can't wait to tell you about it. JC says, "PSG's midfield is really strong. What's our midfield going to look like?" I think it's probably going to be Rice, Marino, and Odegaard. I think the midfield that you saw the other day against Ipswich, I think that'll probably be the midfield that we will use. Paul says the 2 halves were stuck together, but on the Lint ones, they were separate. Well, a little point for Lint there, but still not as good as Cadbury's. Kwame says he's going to go for Liverpool, Arsenal, Nottingham Forest, Man United, City, and Newcastle. Of course, Newcastle have already won a trophy, so surely they would be first because they've already picked it up. Felix says, "Hi, Tom. I know it's been a while since you last brought it up, but my uncle works in marketing at Nando's, and he said that they might be able to get you a sponsorship." Felix, send me a message. DM me. I'm very interested. Let me know. I had one yesterday. I was like, I need to have like a relatively... I was out. I need to have a relative calorie counting a little bit. So I was like, I need to go grab something. So I went and got just butterfly chicken, medium, macho peas, spicy rice, about 800 calories. Decent. For my lunch. Yeah, please do, Felix, get in touch, mate. I'd love to. I'd love to have a chocolate cake sponsor. That'd be beautiful. Ashley says, "PSG home leg, big game for Leo. Going to come against Marquinhos and Pacho, of course, who was linked to Arsenal when he was at Frankfurt. Who is faster and stronger? Marino can trouble them physically, with Marino a bit deeper, but Leo and Odegaard in tandem must be there at their best against those centre-backs, for sure." Kazang says, "What do you think of Van Dijk gathering his teammates to watch Arsenal Crystal Palace?" I don't really have a thought. It's very normal. Well, Liverpool can win the league, so naturally I think all those players would want to be together. It would be nice to make it completely facile, though, and just futile rather, and just win that game pretty comfortably. Kwame says, "Do you see a Marino Gyokeres partnership? Not as a front 2, no. It would be as a 1, and then Marino maybe playing a supporting role in midfield, but not as a front 2. Let's go to the Nando's talk. I mean, naming rights, I don't think are up for discussion, but certainly we can have a conversation about sponsorship. So Nicholas says, "Tom, UK Cadbury's eggs are so much better than the USA. Cadbury's uses Hershey's chocolate in the US, which is just awful chocolate to make it, and matters worse. Our US eggs are 1 whole egg, no halves." Yeah, Hershey's is horrendous. It's just awful chocolate. Awful chocolate. It's just not worth it. And Baku Lasagnas points out the number 2, which is obviously Hotel Chocolat, which are just, again, very, very good. Brian says, "Could Jakub Kiwior be staying with Arsenal now?" There is a chance that he could stay. Of course, we know that he has before been very open to the idea of leaving Arsenal, mainly because, of course, he wasn't playing. Gabriel was playing, and why would he want to stay at a club where he's just not going to be getting regular minutes at the club? It would make and does make very little sense for him to do that. So I think that there is now the likelihood that Kiwior's got a greater chance of staying. But if he was to go, what it does do is it does generate a greater level of transfer fee. I think that's what we could probably look forward to. So that's the idea, I think. Felix says, why is Jorginho injured? I think he's got quite a serious rib injury on the way he landed against Brentford when he went up for a challenge. I don't know if they're broken ribs, but certainly it was a really rough landing and did not look comfortable. So the idea, and when you break your ribs, if you've ever done it, it is one of the most uncomfortable and difficult things to recover from, because when you're sleeping, you're sleeping on your ribs, on your side, on your back, on your front, wherever you're sitting, laying, it's putting pressure on them, and it's so painful. I always feel sorry for anybody who has to suffer a rib injury. Tajay says, do you think that we will get caught up in the Champions League race with Newcastle and others given our Champions League ambitions? I don't think so, no. I think we'll be fine. If Arsenal win their next game, which puts them on 69 points, because Villa and Man City play each other, Chelsea are also got to play Everton, which is not an easy game these days. Everton have had a very, very good season indeed so far, and they're picking off points off people you wouldn't expect. Forest are going and facing Brentford. Newcastle away to Ipswich. You'd think they'd win that. I think if Arsenal win their next two games, we would lock off second place. That would be on 35 points. Of course, we've still got Southampton to play on the final day, which is going to be, you shoe in for 3 points. If Arsenal beat Crystal Palace, if they beat Bournemouth at home, if they beat Southampton, win those three games, I think second place, no matter what happens against Newcastle and Liverpool, I think they have won that second place finish, if you like. Lee says, Tom, you've said that Sesko is not the finished article just yet. Can you see Arsenal buying him and Gyokeres? No, I can't. And as I've been asked this before, why would one join Arsenal if they've already signed the other one? They wouldn't. They wouldn't make any sense for them to do that. 101 says, I've noticed how much better Martinelli has been since Marino has come into the team. Have you noticed this? I don't know if it's necessarily a causation thing. I think it's just that Martinelli has hit form. He's hit his stride, and he goes through these patches of play. He goes through these periods of really encouraging form, and it's very good to see Martinelli back, because if Arsenal are going to win something, they need their best players in the field to doing their absolute maximum. And of course, as we know, Martinelli is one of their better players. So if Martinelli's on form, we have got a much, much better chance of securing the Champions League. So we need to absolutely have to see Martinelli on the field and playing to his absolute best. I don't know if it's because of Marino, but Marino has definitely helped improve a lot of things in the team. But yeah, let's wait and see if Martinelli can keep it up until the end of the season. Oliver says, who would you put in the middle for PSG? I personally would like to see Winery, Odegaard and Rice and keep Marino at centre forward. I think based on what we saw against Ipswich, seeing what we might see against Palace tomorrow, there's a chance that we might see that same midfield, that Marino, Rice and Odegaard. I think that's probably the best way forward. I don't think throwing Winery in is the right choice here. I think Winery is going to be the option from the bench, of course. I'm not sure he's the right choice for this one. We need to make sure we win that midfield battle, and having both Marino and Rice in there against Vitinha, Fabian and João Neves, I think is probably our best bet without Partey being available. Shania says, hi, Tom. Hypothetical. We are guaranteed to get to the final with a 25% chance of winning it, but we lose a player to a controversial red, and Gary Neville and Carragher are on co-comps. I mean, what's the hypothetical? So you're saying you can guarantee me a chance of the final with a 25% chance of winning it, but I have to listen to. I mean, I don't have to listen to any commentary, Shano, because I would be there. So I'd hope I'd be there at least. So I don't usually have to listen to co-coms. So yeah, no. Not the way. Not the way. Martin says he can't. It's an age thing. We can't use him until next season. Is that question about Max Dowman? I assume. Anyone asking about Max Dowman? Yeah, we can't use Max Dowman. It's a legislation thing. He cannot be played, I'm afraid. Knowledge says, I hate the way Arteta sometimes talks about injured players. To be extreme, we could see someone get shot in the head. And his reply would be, he suffered an injury. We will see how it goes. I mean, he's obviously always going to be, holding things back. He's going to be, and I get your hypothetical scenario, but he's always going to be holding information back. I mean, I guess it should be frustrating. It shouldn't really be frustrating for anyone other than journalists who actually are trying to get the stories, get the information. For you and all of you, it should only matter really when the lineups come out. That's the only time it really should matter for you. For now, he's doing what you'd hope any manager would do and withhold information from the opposition. Surely we want him to hold information from the opposition and not give them insights into the team. I don't know why it would be frustrating for you. It's frustrating for me, but I don't know why it'd be frustrating for anyone else. Chris says, Tom, with Martinelli's form, should we be looking for a younger left winger as cover for him rather than Nico Williams, who probably won't leave Athletic Club? Why won't he probably leave Athletic Club, Chris? The expectation is that he will be looking at a summer move. So I think there's a good chance we could see Nico Williams leave in the summer. There's certainly an expectation that he is going to leave the club in the summer. Rahul says, Tom, if we win the Champions League, is there a chance that Isak would push for a move? Maybe. There's maybe a slither that could happen, but there's no guarantee. But maybe is the answer for that one. Gooner says, Tom, I heard Man United are interested in Ramsdale. Do you think he could thrive there? I mean, he's certainly better than Onana as a goalkeeper, in my opinion. So he could potentially thrive there. He could do well there, but equally, he may still struggle. He's got his limitations, Ramsdale. We learned those limitations at Arsenal. We know that Raya is certainly a much better goalkeeper. We know that now. But, there's a chance that he could do quite well there at Manchester United. He could do well at Chelsea. Both of those teams need a new goalkeeper, that's for sure. Uma says, why did Ethan play at 15 if we can't use Max? Because the season that Ethan played when he was 15, he turned 16 in that season. Max Downman doesn't turn 16 until next season. So that's why. Alex says, we're all off to Munich. Let's put these PSG fans in their place with their arrogance. Did they not learn from Madrid? Vamos. Yeah, there's a lot of arrogance and there's a lot of confidence in PSG that they're going to be going through. A lot of confidence. JC says, does anyone truly understand Dr. Waffle? I don't know who Dr. Waffle is. Who is Dr. Waffle, JC? Please do let me know who Dr. Waffle is. Pear says, do you see MLS taking the same positional evolution arc as Saka, slowly moving into more forward positions? Certainly, definitely an opportunity to see that. He could progress, but I think Arteta really does like him as a left back. And I think he's talked about him being a left back, and that is where he sees his future, in that left back position. So I really don't know whether or not it's a guarantee that he moves further forward, but there's a chance. But I think the most likely outcome is that Lewis Skelly stays where he is at the moment, but things can change. Chris says he's come out and said he wants to play Champions League next season with the Athletic Club. Not as far as I'm aware. I mean, he might have come out and said he hopes to get the qualification, but the feeling is that Nico Williams will still leave in the summer. That's certainly the feeling that he will get a move. He might be talking about trying to get them Champions League by winning the Europa League or qualifying for the Champions League, and he may say that now, but there is a feeling amongst certainly those that have reported on it, that are covering the story, that he will leave from Athletic. Perry says, hi Tom, striker is defo on the list, but what about a midfield signing? We need signings in all midfield positions, assuming that Havertz will be playing as an attacking midfielder. I think defensive midfield, obviously, we know is an area that we want to see some movement, some investment, some signings. Zubimendi, we know, is Arsenal's number one target. But other than that, I think that there is the pathway for Max Dowman. Havertz could indeed play more as an attacking midfielder next season if we sign a centre forward. May rotate with Ødegaard in certain games. Could play left 8 as well, of course, as we know. So there are lots of opportunities for next season to have a midfield of different structures. Marino, of course, has come so far since the start of the season. He'll be obviously a big part of the team too. And they've got to think about, as I said, the pathway for some younger players as well. What Soup says, saw PSG fans saying Arsenal have no history in Europe, but ironically we have one more European titles than them, despite the oil money. It's true. Of course, Arsenal are cup winners, as we know. And Arsenal, of course, there's always kind of that joke, isn't it, when you hear and you see the chance of champions of Europe, you'll never sing that. Ipswich Town winning the UEFA Cup, as we know, but we've won the Intercity Fairs Cup. We won that in 1970. We won. In fact, the Intercity Fairs Cup, which kind of was one of those tournaments that merged into something else, and was only around, I think, did Arsenal win it in its penultimate season of existence? And then you have the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup, of course, as well, which was the teams that kind of won those domestic cup competitions, and then gradually merged into what we now know as the UEFA Cup and, of course, the UEFA Europa League. But certainly it was a very important cup win, and it cemented Alan Smith's legacy as one of Arsenal's best centre forwards as well, and it shouldn't be taken for granted that. But yeah, they quickly forget those. But PSG, I mean, what European honours? They won the Cup Winners' Cup as well in 1996. They won the Intertoto Cup in 2001. It's ironic, isn't it, that they've won the same European Cup as us, and yet still I've said they've supposedly their fans say that we have no European pedigree, yet they don't either. Hassana says, would you accept £35 million for Kivior and buy a Tomiyasu type defender? Absolutely. If someone offered us £35 million for Kivior now, when it was like a debate whether we would even make back our money on Kivior, I think you'd absolutely have to take it. Kwame says, you're right. We absolutely won the First Cup in 1970s. Yeah. Because Hank says, I cannot imagine people trolling Arsenal if we don't win the Champions League. And if Man U, City, Tottenham and Chelsea were to win. Of course, one of those teams we expect to pick up a trophy. City winning the FA Cup, Man United or Spurs winning the Europa League, and Chelsea perhaps picking up the Conference League. The worst thing next season is that if Chelsea win the Conference League, their fans are going to sing Champions of Europe. That's the most shameless thing I think I would have ever seen. But West Ham fans have done it. So Chelsea fans, I wouldn't put too far beyond them either. Let's scroll and see if I've missed anything else. Jonathan says, definitely easier for Man United and Spurs to win the Europa League than Arsenal to win the Champions League. I wouldn't go that far, Jonathan. I rate Athletic Bilbao incredibly highly. Athletic Club, I should say. Incredibly high. I keep saying Athletic Bilbao now because whenever I listen to the radio or pundits, that's what they call them. And I'm like, stop calling them that. It's not their name. The Athletic Club, who are based in Bilbao. Unfortunately, it's the fault of like video games mainly that have done that. Let's go to Hasalo, who says, do you think Gabriel would leave this summer if we leave for big money? Would you then sell Kivior? Probably not. If we were to sell Gabriel, you'd probably keep Kivior and bring in another defender like a Ural Hato, for instance, somebody like that. But Gabriel is a really interesting one. We know there's a lot of interest from Saudi, but the guy loves Arsenal. The guy is obsessed with Arsenal, and is, I don't think there is any. I don't think there is any real concern at the moment about Gabriel leaving, but it's there, it's present. There's a chance it could happen, but I don't think it's wildly likely. Pear says, do you think Big Ange will remain at Spurs if they fail to win the Conference or the Europa League? I think whatever happens, I think Ange will leave. Even if they were to win the Europa League, I've got a feeling that Ange might leave, but maybe I'm wrong. Paul says, would we get a star on our shirt if we won the Champions League? It's up to the club. So it's not like one of those World Cup things where if you win the World Cup, you get a star on the international badge. Because like Nottingham Forest, for instance, have won 2 European Cups and have 2 stars above their crest. But teams like Chelsea, Man United, Man City, they have not added stars or crests things to their badge. So it's totally up to the club. I don't think I would want that because, I think it's more of a historical note. Like Aston Villa don't have either. They've won the they've won the Champions League as well, the European Cup when it was that. So they've not added anything. So no, I don't think you would add a star. There's a lot of teams that have won more Champions League than us and haven't added stars. So yeah, I don't think so. But for the next season, of course, you would get a special crest on the shirt if you were to win the Champions League. You do get a crest on your shirt for the next season, I do believe. But for the point of the club, it wouldn't be a star, I don't think. Jesse says, I don't get it with Arsenal fans. We have a reliable backup like Kivior, and then we want to sell him for 30 million. I totally don't get it. Like, who are our natural left backs? The issue with that, Jesse, is that Kivior has been pushing for a move before. Yes, he's coming in at the moment and getting some. But if Gabriel is to return from injury and play every single game, and then Kivior pushes for a move, say, the summer after next, having not played, you're not going to get back much money at all. So the idea is that if Gabriel's coming back and you've risen the value of that young defender that you signed for 20 million, you can get more than, you can perhaps double your money. That's the type of business that clubs do end up looking to achieve. So that's why clubs do it. It's not a case of, you can't understand. You should absolutely be able to understand that's how it works, because the likelihood is that Gabriel will come back, will start the majority of games. We've got Calafiori, got to remember, as well, also in the squad, who can play left-sided centre-half. So this could be the maximum we ever were able to get for, say, Jakub Kiwior in the market, and then he might struggle again for minutes. I see where you're coming from. I absolutely get that. But the reality is that this could maximize Kiwior's value, and you need to be good at selling in the market, and getting maximum value for players that aren't necessarily guaranteed starters is definitely the sign of a club that are very nuanced and effective when it comes to transfers. Salah says, would you consider Bastoni if we sell Gabriel? Definitely. Amira says, backup centre-back is such a hard position because that's where Arteta rotates the least. But when we have to want someone who is of the same level to come in. It's very difficult to find that, of course. But I think Kiwior may push for a move still if Gabriel is to return for next season. Kunle says, who gives the guard of honour? Is it all teams? If Liverpool win the league, before we play them at Anfield, which is very likely, there's a very good chance we will give Liverpool a guard of honour. A very, very good chance that they will get a guard of honour from Arsenal. Arsenal tend to do it. They've done it before. They've done it for Man United. They've done it for other teams. There's a very good chance that Arsenal would give Liverpool a guard of honour at Anfield, certainly. And I don't particularly like the idea of it, but it's a respect thing. It's just a tradition in English football that does happen. So Nicholas says, if we win the Champions League, it will be in large part because of Kiwior playing really well. And without question, if Arsenal win the Champions League, Kiwior is going to have a massive role to play in it. And Lee says, with Isak probably out of reach, would you look at any other Newcastle players? Gordon and Guimaraes are the only really other two that and Livramento I quite like as well, but Guimaraes and Gordon are the two that you look at the most. Amberley says, why do people care so much about the guard of honour? It's really not a big deal. Mainly because of social media. Just the fans online giving them stick. I mean, if you're that bothered by what fans of other clubs say to you online, probably time to grow up a little bit, to be honest. Per says, in my opinion, we need a Rob Holding type player in the squad, someone who comes in and does the job. I think we need a little bit better than Rob Holding, Per, but I get the idea. I get the theory. And Fuad says, which league in Europe do you think transitions best when players come to the Premier League? It's a good question. Which league transitions the best? I mean, Arsenal have found success with some players from lots of different leagues. Gabriel came in and initially struggled, I think, from the French league. Marino initially came in and struggled from La Liga. Jurien Timber came in from the Netherlands, has been excellent since really hitting the ground running and been able to start in the team. Who else is there really? Odegaard did quite well at the beginning, coming in from La Liga too. You look at Haaland from the Bundesliga, but Haaland's kind of Marmoush has done pretty well since coming in from Germany as well. At Liverpool, you can look at some of the Portuguese players tend to struggle more. You tend to not have as many examples of players coming in from the Portuguese league and doing as well. French league is very physical, so it has that kind of advantage as well, that if a player comes in from France, that they could do like Bernardo Silva, for instance, is not exactly the most physical of players, but he's dealt with a lot of physicality in France, then did really well at City as a result of that. De Bruyne from Germany has done really, really well. But there's arguments for both sides. I think you'll be able to come up with examples for success stories and also failures from all leagues into the Premier League, I'm sure. Right, let's bring the show to a close there. I'll be back with you, of course, tomorrow as we look ahead to the game against Crystal Palace in more detail. I'll be getting all the updates from Mikel Arteta's press conference, hopefully an update maybe on the likes of Ricardo Calafiori and how he's getting on. Of course, there was an expectation he could be back before the game against PSG, which would be this game. So let's wait and see. But thank you so much for tuning in. Do drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and all that usual YouTube-y stuff. And I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m, bright and early. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.